Well, it is May 1st, and here we sit in 2020 in COVID-19 lockdown still. I am very close to wrapping up all of this, my father's tales that I'm doing, and it's with mixed emotion that I am bringing it to a close because during this time, it has given me great joy to do. I have loved every moment of it, and after this, I believe I will only have one more entry, and I am going to invite Gary to join me on that one. I haven't spoken with him about that yet, but I will. On this one, I just want to bring in a few kind of little wrap up things about my dad. My dad asked my mother when my hair, I was very, very bald when I was when I was born, and I continued to to be slight of hair. And then at about 3, it began to really come in. And of course, it came in, but my great grandmother, my mother's maternal grandmother, made me a lot of. She knitted. She could knit and crochet, but she did knitting with this fine yarn, and she made a lot of little outfits for me, and they all included hats because I have a huge head. My head literally is figuratively it isn't. Literally it is. And so she made little little crocheted hats for me until my hair came in, really came in, and it came in thick, and my dad asked her to please let my hair be long because he liked my hair. And he said, I've this is a story that they told me many times. He never interfered with my mother's hair or my older sister's hair. She, my both my mom pretty much had short hair. My sister had short hair a lot. Then as time went on, my sister grew her out, cut it, grew it out, which I did the same thing, permed it, unpermed. We went through all these things, but I really had long hair, and without it being cut too much until I was about 13, and then my mom cut it up to my shoulders. And but I still like long hair. I prefer to have long hair. My dad wanted me to have long hair. That was one request that he had about that, and so he did that. One regret that I have is that among many things my dad could do, he was a wonderful welder. He could weld so that the where you would blend the metals together, it was just smooth. There's an art to being a good welder, and I do know that from being around him and hearing him talking about things that he did, but I never had the foresight to say, teach me how to do it. Teach me how to do it. He was always very careful with the flash and with the, being careful, very, very careful. Had the safety equipment, the head, whole thing, looked like a knight that went over his head for protection. But I wish that I had learned how to weld from him, not to learn a living, but to make art on a small scale, because you can buy those little small welders that you can make art with, metal art, and I regret that. I really wish that I had. There are a lot of things that I wish I had learned from my dad that I didn't, and I didn't think about it. One thing that that my dad could do when his younger brother got married, and my dad was very close to his youngest brother because having been in a family with 5 boys, being the oldest, a lot of taking care of his younger brother fell to him. And they both always said he raised, I raised him, and my uncle would say he raised me. They were very close. And so when he got married, he moved to Fort Worth for a time. And when he did, he and his new wife rented an apartment. They got an apartment there, unfurnished. And so my dad, one day, pulled up. They pulled up, and my dad and his brother loaded my parents' refrigerator into a truck, and my dad had given away the refrigerator without mentioning it to my mom. And he's like, "Oh, no worries. We have another one being delivered." But the one that he gave his younger brother, my mother loved. It was a Frigidaire, and she was talking about how much she loved it. And The one he bought was called a Kelvinator. And if you look up Kelvinator refrigerators, they are very stylish and they're very curvy, like Art Deco style. Uh, if you, as a matter of fact, I think if you look for refrigerators, Art Deco style, the Kelvinator brands will come up, I believe. But that was, even though my mother was unhappy about it, that was the best refrigerator ever. And as time went on, years went on, and they bought us side by side when we were in a different house. When we moved into a different house, they bought us a new side by side refrigerator, and then the Kelvinator went into the utility room as the overflow with, put Cokes and other things in that. Everyone should, if possible, have an overflow refrigerator. But the thing about it, it lasted from that time until 2000. What was it? 2001? No, 2002 or three, when it burned in the lake house fire. All that time. I mean, that thing hung in there, and it had been moved several times to their lake house. Uh, he had loaned it out to someone and moved it back, but the door handle broke. Is that, and my mother was like, "Well, that's it. The Kelvinator's gone. It's history." He's like, "Oh, no, no." He went to his shop and he made this little latch, and he put it on the outside. It was small, very small, and that was the latch. And so when people would try to open that refrigerator, it's like, "What's the trick here?" It's like, "Oh, there's a secret latch there." He wasn't gonna let the the Kelvinator go. It was just one of those priceless things. But my dad had all sorts of skills, as I have talked endlessly about in these 14 entries thus far. And when I was in high school, as I have already mentioned, he put his foot down about, as I have also said, I was more of the creative arts person, and I did get to do some of that, true, but he said you will take shorthand, typing, and bookkeeping, because with those skills you can always get a job. And I can probably type. The last time I tested myself, was about at 110. I can't do that on these devices because I'm typing strictly with my little finger. But he was right about that. But he had those skills too. And while he didn't necessarily use those exactly in his to earn a living. He didn't rely on those to earn a living. He had those skills, and we have in our family his from high school, his shorthand book, and it was unbelievable how he wrote in shorthand. It was very impressive. But I'm looking at it. I'm sitting at it really right now. His knee hole desk. A knee hole desk is a desk you pull all the way up to your knees go under it. It's a smallish desk, very beautiful wood. Has three drawers down one side and a lap drawer. And then it has a little writing tray. That's like, on a nightstand, we have a butler tray that pulls out. Well, this is like a writing tray. It pulls out. And I spent they got this before they got me. So this has been in my family my whole life. And I'm so happy that I have it, that it has endured and come along all this time. It still has that same smell when you open the drawers that I remember as a child, but this is where my dad would write bills and do everything at this desk. And I'm so happy that I have it. My dad, I want to say, had a personality that could be. He was an Aquarius. He was born in January 31st. I don't know if I believe in all that stuff or not, but my mother had a big personality, very outgoing. And my dad always said that my mother could tell a joke and everyone laughed, and he could tell a joke and everybody was pissed off because they thought he wasn't kidding. But he really was, and he tried to have a more outgoing, jovial personality. It just wasn't his nature. He could be very funny, and he was a great storyteller, but he wasn't one of these that came in and owned the room. He came in and he was in the room and he was a part of it, and certainly a presence and all of that. But he had a very more introverted style personality, for sure. But he worked on it. He really did. He knew that he had the introverted personality and that could come across as unfriendly or snobby or arrogant or whatever. And so he worked really hard to not have that presence. And it worked. It was, although he never, as I said, was the one that just came into the room and lit everything up all, huge, huge, huge. But he certainly had a flame, a spark when he came into a room, for sure. So that concludes 14 entries into my father's tales.